Okay, so welcome to another episode of Mental Health Podcast. Today we're joined by Nigel Linacre. He's the creator of the Grief Opera. So we're doing it a little bit different this week, guys. We're going to be doing it on Zoom, as you can see. So do forgive us if it goes a bit pear-shaped. So Nigel, could you just give us a little introduction about yourself?
Sure, Matt. So my name's Nigel Linacre, as you said. A couple of years ago, we lost our younger son, George Linacre. He died by suicide, and I started writing words that have become, since, with the addition of Vladimir Miller's music, the Grief Opera.
Okay, excellent. So what is the Grief Opera? Is it about, like, obviously your lyrics are quite deep, aren't they? They're quite. I mean, I've listened to a bit of it, and it's Yeah. So do you want to fill us in a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And I do want to say that the lyrics, the whole thing, are now available on streaming platforms like Amazon, Spotify, and so on, and all of that. So whatever. So when you lose a son, a friend, a close friend, whoever, to suicide, you're quite likely to go into shock, and I did.
Yeah.
So massive confusion, not really believing it at some level, not being able to function day to day, not feeling like living, actually, not feeling like dying, just in shock. And I started writing in that time. I've written poetry, I've written business books and so on. And I started writing, and I started with a poem for George's funeral, because the rest of the family, they all volunteered to do the eulogy and all that stuff. I thought, okay, if they're doing that, I better do something. I want to do something. I need to do something. And I wrote a poem about George. And there's a chorus, a 4-line chorus in the poem, if I can share it.
Yeah, of course, yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. Great. So he goes, because he was a lovely boy, George, and this is all true, right? So, never ever heard you criticize, show off, or make yourself sound wise. Never ever heard you complain. You showed us love, and you hid away pain. And I think that's what George did. I know he showed us love, and I think he hid away the pain. You know, I don't think he. Yeah, he just kind of hid slightly.
Isn't that the thing? Isn't that the thing with suicide? Like, you just don't know. It's a bit like that Norwich, Ed, that Norwich commercial you shared. You know, the one where you think it's the guy that's depressed there, but it's actually the guy that's been smiling and jumping around, joking. It's actually him that commits suicide. So, it's quite a lot. It's quite deep, and you don't realise what's going on inside the mind, sort of thing.
You don't. I mean, we often don't really realize what's going inside our mind. We probably think that the way we're feeling is like normal or something, or maybe we don't. So you're absolutely right. And by the way, that's a fact that Norwich this film's fantastic piece of film. I mean, just wonderful. If anybody hasn't found it yet. So I didn't know what was going on for George. I saw him a couple of times in the preceding 2 months. I talked with him. I didn't see it. So, of course, when you lose someone to suicide, and when we talk about losing them to suicide or dying by suicide rather than committing, because that sometimes carries the baggage of like crime, like committing a crime. And so I had no idea it was happening. You replay the conversations. You think, what could I have done? What could I have said? How could I have created a space where he would have felt like saying something like, Dad, I'm really struggling, or even the word help. So we added the last big song in the Grief Opera is called Just One Word, because George never in his life asked for help. So just one word, a little bit kind of goes, there's just one word I want you to say, and it switches to whisper help, say help, sing help, shout help. So it's what we need to do, right? When we're really struggling, we've got this idea in our lives that we have to sort our own selves out completely, right? We've got that idea, and it's just not true.
Well, we're humans, aren't we? We we survive on community, and yes, we, to an extent, you have to deal with your own problems and your own family unit and stuff like that. But as a species, we've evolved to be a community, and we have to look after each other. So you do have to have slight kind of empathy.
100%, Ed. So I'm going to say I agree with both things you're saying there. First of all, we should try to look after ourselves so that we don't become a burden to others. Try to, but we're not going to manage it completely. We're going to need help, and we want to help one another, right? We want to help one another. That's in us. It's part of our nature. And when we help other people, we know how we feel. We feel better too when we help other people, right? So it's a need we have. But there's something that gets in the way for many of us some of the time that means we're reluctant to say, excuse me, Ed, excuse me, Matt, I need help. I don't even know what it is, but I know, we hold back. Many of us, most of the time, hold back from that. And it's a disaster. It's a disaster. It's a disaster as much as that was part of the dynamic with George. So the grief opera has got a big chunk of my grief, my pain, my and all of that. And we can come to that. And then there's also really clear messages about what we need to do for one another. And if I'd been better at that, George might still be here.
So what do you
so was that your coping mechanism, or your way of working through grief to make this opera?
Well, it's a great question. I think it's turned out that way. It wasn't my plan. My plan was just to, what do you do when you're waiting for the funeral, or when you're waiting even to get your son's body? What do you do with your days? You can't work, right? So I started writing. Said, what was that? Started writing and writing and writing. So there wasn't a purpose to start with. And then after a while, I realized that I needed something to come from my son's death. I needed something good, something helpful.
That ray of light.
I needed something to come from something that still seems meaningless and just a big mistake.
Yeah.
Right? Huge mistake. I couldn't just leave it with it. It's just terrible, the worst ever mistake. And there's nothing. I couldn't do that. I had to create something, right?
Yeah. So I mean, surely you don't blame yourself though, do you? Do you blame yourself? I mean, it sounded like you were saying that if you had changed certain things, you might still be here, as if you're taking a part of the burden, as if you're taking a bit of the blame on your own shoulders there, Nigel.
Yeah, and I think that's true. So, and I think, when I talked in these terms in the months following George's death, people said, oh no, don't do that. Don't do that. I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that comes up, especially losing son, daughter to suicide, is well, actually, first of all, not first, but in there's a feeling of colossal feeling of failure. I mean, how big a failure is it to lose a son when he dies by his own hand? I mean, that strikes me a pretty big failure as a result. No,
I think as parents, we are here to protect our children, no matter what the age, whether they're 1 or 41. Like, it doesn't matter. And I think, you are going to feel some sort of guilt, whether it's your fault or not.
Absolutely. So there's a feeling of guilt. And I knew nothing about this world of death by suicide and grief. I knew nothing until George died on the 19th of November, 2021. But I've now got to know quite a lot of people who've lost a son, daughter, brother, in one case, 2 brothers, father, to suicide. And we sat down together. There's a really cool organization, Survivors of Bereavement by Suicide, and you can meet in groups and so on. And this feeling of guilt is usual. It's not the only feeling, because of course the first feeling is, I think it's like in those films where there's an explosion and then you see people lying on the ground. There's like dust, and they're lying down, and they start beginning to move, and they can't hear anything, you know, can't really see anything.
Yeah.
It's like that. That's the first thing. It's like you're in a car crash. You're just gone, and shock, and this can't be, and what, and all of that, and then you've got a pain. So quite quickly, I realized that I didn't want to live. I also didn't want to die, so I wasn't actually suicidal. I wasn't actually suicidal.
You're just numb, wasn't you, by the sound of it?
Numb, Matt. Exactly, numb. No wish for anything. I mean, no wish for anything. And there's a song on the Grief opera that's called "Bring Him Back," and it begins with these words. I'm taking it as okay that I can share some words and stuff. And
of course, yeah.
Thanks. So it begins, "What can be said to death? Take him not, take me. On this let us swiftly agree, but do not dismiss a father's plea. Seize me fast, take me back, a simple, easy heart attack. I won't resist, will gladly go. This plain request you surely know." So this is the classic bargaining phase in death, right? I'm trying to get George back, and my wish...
I'll do anything for it.
Yeah, take me, just take me today. Come on, take me, and bring him back. That was it, right? So you're in this numb, awful phase, and thinking of George every day. Can't sleep. Every time you wake from a sort of superficial sleep, there's, oh God, this. It comes back again, right? Somehow in sleep, it's sort of slightly forgotten, but you wake up and it is. So it's a complete disaster. And a complete disaster with this feeling of, you know, it's irrecoverable. I mean, how do you get that back, right? You know, you break something, you fix it, or make another one, or get another one, or something, right?
Yeah, cool.
Somebody dies, how do you fix that? So not fixable. And I mean, I replayed the conversations with George, the conversations that I had with him, two meetings in the preceding 2 months, and what did he say and what didn't? And now I'm looking backwards. What were the clues? Were there clues? What were the clues? What could I see there, right? So I wouldn't call it blame. I don't blame anyone. I don't blame George. I don't blame me. Blame has this element of negative criticism. But do I feel guilt? Do I so wish that those conversations had been different? And then they may not have led to a different outcome, but different conversations that might have led to a different outcome, that would have led to, of course, I wish that. I just take me back there, you know, do this time travel thing, sit down, and George, tell me what's going on. You know, you seem a little bit quiet. Come on, just tell me, son. Whatever it is, just tell me.
Nigel, sorry, just quickly, so George wasn't he a part of a band as well? So, you know,
Yeah.
just trying to set the scene for the listeners here. So,
right,
he was in a band. He played bass. Was it?
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah, maybe you're telling me. Yeah. So he played bass, and then obviously we had COVID, and then that really when you got really depressed during COVID when he couldn't play with the band and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So he was in a progressive rock band called Eschar. That's ESCHAR. Fantastic music. They played in Britain and Germany. Really technically very good. And as you say, Matt, with lockdown, it stopped because they composed together. So they couldn't perform, all gigs gone. They couldn't rehearse, illegal. They couldn't even meet together. You can't do music properly on things like Zoom with different people.
It doesn't quite work, does it?
It doesn't work. So that all stopped, and that was how George expressed himself. Music was his life. And it all stopped, and then we didn't know whether he was depressed. It's a reasonable speculation, Matt, that he was. Yeah. He just never went to a doctor or anything, right? Just never did. But we do know that he said to his bandmates, Rob, Rory, and Sam, that he couldn't. That he was anxious about meeting new people, new situations. They were trying to help him, move on in career and so on. And he said, just stop. According to them, he said, just stop. You know, I get anxious about this. So there's evidence of some social anxiety, which became really big in lockdown, because once you're out and not meeting people, right, then if you're worried about meeting people, it's so much harder. So it's kind of like the thaw from lockdown that really seems to have played a part.
So, okay, so that's...
And George was a great musician. And the wonderful thing, so when I started talking with Vladimir Miller, who's an amazing jazz composer, pianist, made the music, right? I wrote the words, he wrote the music. And Vladimir said, well, you know, grief is universal and music is universal, and it's really a really good, you know, solvent for that. And he said he would start his approach to music with some of George's bass rhythms.
Okay.
So George's music is in the Grief opera, right? So the opera, and it's somewhere between an opera, a concert, and a musical, really. So it's not like a high blown opera. It's more, you know, like a musical in some ways. And George's complete. This performance about George's life and death has his own music in it. So he's still here. He's still here and he's still performing. And when Vladimir had that idea, I felt this has to happen. This is going to be amazing. This is going to be a memorial to George as well. Yeah.
So is that something that, obviously, there are going to be times, obviously anniversaries and birthdays and stuff like that. Do you then go back to obviously it's your opera as well? Do you listen to that music, listen to those pieces of music that he played as a sort of coping mechanism, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I spent a bit of time listening to the Grief opera on Spotify this evening to prepare for this conversation, right, to kind of bring it right back. I don't, the surviving family of which I'm a part is who I'm talking about when I say we. I usually just speak for myself, but I can say that we, you know, we all, it's hard for all of us. And anniversaries and birthdays and all of that are especially hard. I think of George every day. I think of him in the mornings. I've thought of him more in these 2 and a bit years than I did in the previous 10 or even 20, right? Because I've thought of him more than I've thought of any other human being. And just, you know, a lot. Your question about coping mechanism, Ed, is a really good one. People say, you know, grief is unique and everyone's different. And these things are true, but I think there's something huge and in common about extreme grief, like when it's you're losing someone close to you to suicide. And that's based upon having met a lot of people in this way. The pain seems to be basically the same pain. And then what can we do? Well, people say time heals with grief, but I think it depends what you do with your time. So grief can be too hard to face, just too hard. If it's too hard to face, you can't face it. There it is. But if you never face grief, how will it change? And how will your relationship to it change? So I'm not a psychotherapist. I have some training in coaching and people and stuff. The basis of psychotherapy is that you face what you've been avoiding.
Yeah, you got to face it. Yeah.
Got to face it, right? You both have, I know that you faced huge things and made fantastic changes. And if you're in denial, like I just can't deal with it. I'm okay. Not. Then maybe nothing's really going to change. You're like pushing down a ball, like imagine an inflated ball, and you're pushing it down in a swimming pool or something. Yeah, you're holding it, but actually it's going to come up. So sooner or later, you can only change the situation by facing it. And people who've come and seen the Grief opera have said they found words for grief. They've had a sense of it. They've been somehow processing their own grief while hearing me sing about my grief. So I think
I think music in general is it's such a powerful thing. Like I've said on the podcast before, like I've got a playlist that I will go and put on if I'm feeling sad and I want a good cry. I've got a few songs that they're my go-to weeping songs, so to speak. And I think everyone has those, and we can pick out songs that we go, oh, that song really reminds me of me and my wife, or me and my kids, or whatever. And I think for yourself, using music to not only kind of honour your son, but to also honour him and use it as a way of dealing with grief is just, it's a really good thing.
Cool, Ed. And I'm really hoping, some people who've been to grief opera have said things like afterwards they've got in touch with estranged sons in one case and estranged daughter, and they've rebuilt relationships. So the thing that I want to do is save George. Unfortunately, I've missed that. So I'm trying to save someone else or other people, right? And I was able to remember while writing this, I kept trying to still think what was going on for George, what could have happened, what was he thinking? And I remembered that when I was a teenager, I was briefly suicidal, and I wrote down the date of my death just a few months ahead, the day before my next birthday. That was it. And when I wrote this little note for myself, I felt that I had influence over something, even control over something. And my point is that when I was in that state, I was imagining that I was on my own, that nobody could possibly understand or get it. I definitely couldn't talk to my parents or my brothers or anybody. Nobody would get it, right? And I want to say through you, this is not true. Whenever you're struggling, there are people who would help, even a little, maybe a lot. They just do exist. They're around and about. They're there professionally, but there may be friends. There may be someone, I don't know, an uncle, an auntie, someone who could get it, right? And I want that to be communicated as well, really. And I know this is a big theme for you guys. Even when it really looks as though it's completely not okay, actually, this is temporary. Life always has change about it, right? There's always change going on. Could get worse first, right? But there is change. So I want this to be known, and I want people to know that it's okay that when we're really struggling. I know that's a bit of a paradox, right?
Yeah. It's campaign. It's okay.
But that's the thing. I think people think it's a strange feeling to be depressed or feeling low, and I think a lot of people do worry that they are alone. And I think most of us, sometimes we don't want to talk, but we just want to know that there's someone there. Like I always say, like sometimes I don't want to or can't talk to my wife about stuff if I'm feeling low, but just if she's sat in the same room, she doesn't even have to look at me. She could be on her phone. You just know someone's there. And I think it's that thing, is that even if you know someone's on the end of a phone that you can text and go, look, I'm feeling low, or they can just go, I'm here. I think it really does help to make you feel like, actually, I'm not in this on my own.
Yeah, I've done it before, haven't I? I've spoke to you, I've rung you, Ed, and said, look, today I'm really feeling shit, mate. I need,
Yeah.
And you've just had a chat with me about random stuff, and then I've come off the phone and I felt a lot better. But I think it's that saying, I need hello. You should be like, are you all right, mate? Just saying that, are you all right? But it's also saying, yes, I do need help, or can you help me, or can I just talk to you about this for a minute, or can I get this off my chest? And once you've got it off your chest, you feel a lot better.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just want to know that there's someone there. Like you'll phone me and you'll go, I've had a crap day, but we'll talk about football, we'll talk about the gym or whatever. And it's not actually talking about the issue sometimes. It's just knowing there's someone there. You've got a mate there you can just chat to.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Sorry, just as well, without changing the subject too much, because obviously the time, but I just wanted to talk about your Kenya, what you were saying to me earlier on. Could you just mention about that as well, quick, for listeners?
Yeah, so Yes, and I'll try and link it in this way. You know, as well as needing help from one another, we can help one another, and we can even help people really far away. 12 years ago, I was doing some work in Kenya, in East Africa, and some of us noticed the water problem at the school. And it turns out that many schools in Kenya, many schools in many countries actually, don't have any, there's no pipes, there's no taps, there's just rivers, right? Think of the river nearest your home, and imagine that you have to go there to get water and fill up a bucket, right? So that's how millions of people live. And actually, because even in these places, there's rainfall, and rain seeps down underground and settles, and then you can drill down and have a well. In Britain, a few hundred years ago, it was mostly wells, right? You just go to wells, and Jack and Jill went up the hill and the well and all that stuff, right? So we decided to do this. I went home to my wife and son, Tom, George's brother, and said, we'll form this water charity. What should we call it? And my son, Tom, said, well boring, Dad, because he's going to bore wells, right? Bore wells, well boring, get it? Joke. Anyway, so we formed Well Boring. We fixed the water at one school, and 12 years later, Well Boring has got safe water to nearly 400 communities in East and some in West Africa, transforming well over 250,000 lives. There are children every day who would have been sick and are not sick now because they've got safe water. There are children who are living today who would have succumbed to waterborne diseases without the wells that Well Boring has put in. So it's a fantastic charity, and it's just so simple in its work, and it's easy to support. And each well, with all the training and all the drilling and all the fuel and everything, costs about, it's Kenyan shillings, but costs about £7,000 and benefits about 1,000 people. So £7 transforms a life, right? 2 lattes, and you've given somebody safe water for 20, 30 years.
That's incredible.
But you've been credited for it, though. You know, you're saying to me, you
So Well Boring's work was recognised in the 2023 New Year's Honours List when I was given a British Empire Medal, a BEM, which is nice because it says we're okay officially. You know, like we just did this. Now it says you are okay. You have a British Empire Medal.
It's nice to
get
recognition, isn't it? It's always nice to get
It's a fantastic thing, and I want to build a bit of theme out here that links with the Grief opera. They're very different, right? And from very different. One thing is about people being sick and dying from waterborne diseases in many countries in the world. The other is about people dying from suicide for a set of reasons, whatever exactly is going on, and then how you live through the grief and find some way through it. But the common thread here is we can all help make the world a better place. As you do in your podcasts, in your campaigns, you can show people, thinking about you here, Matt, you can show people it's possible to change and really change. It's completely possible because you've done it, right? And you can show hope to people through the It's Okay campaign. And I'm sorry if I'm not capturing the essence of it, but what I want to get to is let's not wait for other people to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to happen. You know, people are doing what they think they can already. Yeah. So we have to do what we can. And if we all do more, whether it's picking up litter in our street, whether it's befriending a lonely neighbor or person, whether it's making the effort to smile and be helpful and let go of our anger and stuff, whether it's just getting to working on our calmness so we can really build whatever it is, right? It's up to us to do this. The world doesn't get to be a better place without people making the world a better place, and there's no people except us.
Yeah.
Does this resonate with you guys?
Yeah, it really does. And you're right. Like, people think, oh well, I can't make a change, so I won't. But I think if everyone makes that tiny little change, you can all make a big difference.
Yeah, all that up, don't they?
Yeah.
It does. Every little thing, every instance, every word we utter, and I want to. As I know we're running short of time here. I want to bring in one more. I mean, positive doesn't really describe it, right? But beyond the shock and pain, the grief of loss that I and others have experienced, beyond that, which sort of breaks you, kind of like tears your heart open, beyond these is a greater awareness of the presence of love. Love. Not love for anyone and not for anyone else, not from anything and not anything else. It's not exclusive. The love I'm talking about, the different kind of ways of thinking about different kinds of love. But so love, it turns out, is here all the time. Love is accessible anytime, anywhere. It already exists. And we don't need a reason to connect with love. It's here already, right? It's like we don't need to wait until all our dreams happen before we can feel good. That's not it. That's not how life works, right? We can allow ourselves to be open to being present, loving, aware, and this is transformational. It really is. Yeah. So,
well,
that's some parting words that you
definitely
can't really beat, to be fair.
No, definitely.
That's not a small thing, right? That's not a small thing. That's not. We wait in our lives. We wait for that perfect moment when we go.
Always, yeah.
I'm okay. I got my house. I paid off the mortgage. I became a director. I got a whatever. And first of all, those moments probably never come. But even when some of them do come, it's like a moment. It's a moment in like maybe, a 60, 70, 80-year life. It's like one moment. And then there's the next thing anyway, right? So life is a process. Life is a journey. I know these things have been said before and they can sound like a yawn cliche, but it really is. And it's a journey it's a journey sometimes through confusion, through pain, through difficulty. Of course, the awfulness is when some of us don't make it through those moments, right? But often life can be a journey through really difficult, awful moments to kind of like, we've done something here. We've made a difference to people, animals, life, society, we've made a difference. And that's it. That's the thing to go for.
Oh, definitely. Obviously we said we was running out of time. It's going to cut off in a minute. So yeah, we've got literally 2 minutes. But I was going to say, like, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great, and obviously we'll put a link in the description to the Grief Opera. If you want to send me it's on Spotify, yeah. So if you send me
the link to it, it's on Amazon, it's at Bandcamp, it's in lots of places. I'll send you some links so you've got them all. And everybody can go. There will be Grief Opera shows this year. Will be more information at griefopera.org. We're supporting Suicide & Co., who are a bereavement charity, supporting people who are really struggling. If you've lost someone to suicide in recent days and you want to reach out and find me, Nigel Linacre, I'm here.
That's very nice.
Amazing.
Well, thanks for coming on, and really appreciate it.
Ed, and well done on the fantastic work you do. And anybody who's listening, you're not following these guys, follow them, get their share and all of that. And together we will make a difference.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Woo!
Perfect.
Cheers.